The morning sky over Seoul turned purple without warning. Every person on Earth stopped what they were doing and looked up. Above the city, a massive ship appeared out of nowhere. It was not like any human spacecraft. The vessel looked like a giant crystal mountain floating in the air. Blue and white lights danced across its surface like lightning trapped in glass. King Do-hyun was having breakfast with his daughter when the purple light filled his dining room. As the ruler of the United Earth Federation, he had seen many strange things in his 40 years of life. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. His security team rushed into the room, their faces pale with fear. "Your Majesty, we need to get you to the bunker immediately," said Captain Minho, his head of security. Before Do-hyun could respond, the walls around them began to glow. A voice filled the air. It was not speaking through any device. The voice came from everywhere at once, speaking directly into their minds. "I am Vathon, god of the Andromeda Galaxy. I have come to claim this world." The voice was like thunder, mixed with music. It made every person on Earth feel small and afraid. Do-hyun felt his daughter grab his hand. Her small fingers were shaking. He squeezed her hand gently and tried to stay calm. Outside the palace windows, people were running. In the streets, cars had stopped moving. Everyone was looking up at the giant crystal ship. Some people fell to their knees, others screamed, but most just stood there, frozen with fear. "All beings of this planet will worship me," the voice continued. "You will build temples in my name. You will offer me your finest treasures. You will serve me for all time. Those who refuse will face my divine anger." Do-hyun closed his eyes and took a deep breath. As a king, he had faced wars, natural disasters, and political crises. But facing a god was something different. He opened his eyes and looked at his daughter. "So-young, go with Captain Minho to the safe room," he said softly. "But Papa, I want to stay with you," she replied, her voice small and scared. "I know, my dear, but I need to handle this situation. I promise I will come to you soon." After his daughter left with the security team, Do-hyun walked to his office. His advisors were already waiting for him. General Taejin stood near the window, his military uniform crisp and ready. Foreign Minister So-min sat at the long table with files spread in front of her. Science advisor Dr. Kyung-ho was typing rapidly on his computer, trying to gather information about the alien vessel. "What do we know?" Do-hyun asked as he entered the room. General Taejin turned from the window. His face was grim. "Sir, similar ships have appeared over every major city on Earth. London, New York, Tokyo, Moscow, everywhere. They are not attacking. But our weapons cannot even detect them properly. It is like they exist in a different dimension. The being calling itself Vathon has been broadcasting the same message worldwide," added So-min. "Every government is in panic. The United Nations is calling for an emergency meeting, but honestly, Your Majesty, I do not think our usual diplomatic methods will work here." Dr. Kyung-ho looked up from his computer. "The energy readings are impossible, sir. This being, whatever it is, has technology that is thousands of years beyond ours. If it wanted to destroy us, it could do so easily." As if responding to their conversation, the voice of Vathon filled the room again. "Leaders of this primitive world, you have 3 days to show me proper worship. Build me temples. Gather your gold and jewels as offerings. Choose your most beautiful citizens to serve in my name. If you fail to satisfy me, I will turn your oceans to dust and your cities to ash." The room fell silent. Through the window, they could see the crystal ship hovering motionlessly above the city. Its lights pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "Sir, we should evacuate the population," General Taejin said. "Get people into underground shelters. Maybe we can protect some citizens if this being decides to attack." "Where would they go?" asked So-min. "These ships are everywhere. There is no safe place on Earth." Do-hyun walked to the window and looked out at his city. Below, millions of people were going about their daily lives, but now with fear in their hearts. Street vendors were still selling food, but their hands shook. Children walked to school, but they kept looking up at the sky. Parents held their children closer than usual. "He is testing us," Do-hyun said quietly. Sir? General Taejian asked. This, Phaethon, he could have destroyed us already, but he did not. He is giving us 3 days. He wants something from us, not just our destruction. He wants worship, Dr. Kyung-ho said. Complete submission. Yes, but why? Do-hyun turned from the window. A being with such power, why does he need our worship? What could we possibly give him that he cannot take? The question hung in the air. Outside, the crystal ship continued its silent watch over the city. That evening, reports came in from around the world. Some countries were already building makeshift temples. Others were gathering their treasures to offer as tribute. A few were preparing their military forces for a hopeless fight. Do-hyun sat alone in his study, thinking. On his desk was a photo of his late wife, June. She had died 2 years ago from illness. Next to it was a drawing his daughter had made for him last week. It showed the two of them holding hands under a rainbow. He picked up the photo of his wife. What would you do? My love, he whispered to the image. As if in answer, the voice of Phaethon filled his study once more. King of this federation, I know you are listening. You rule many people. Your choice will affect millions. Choose wisely. Worship me, and your people will live as my servants. Refuse me, and they will die as rebels. Do-hyun stood up slowly. He walked to his window and looked up at the crystal ship. Its light seemed brighter in the darkness. I request an audience, he said aloud, knowing somehow that the being would hear him. The lights on the ship pulsed once as if in acknowledgement. Tomorrow at dawn I will give you my answer, Do-hyun continued. But first I have something to tell you. A story about what makes humanity special, about what true divinity really means. The ship hovered silently in the night sky, waiting for dawn and the king's response. Dawn broke over Seoul with an orange glow that mixed strangely with the purple light from Phaethon's ship. King Do-hyun stood on the palace balcony, wearing his simple black suit instead of royal robes. He wanted to face this god as a man, not as a king. The crystal ship descended slowly until it hovered just above the palace courtyard. A beam of blue light shot down from its center, and within that light, a figure began to form. Phaethon appeared as a being of pure energy, 12 feet, tall with 4 arms that moved like liquid light. His face was constantly shifting, sometimes looking almost human, other times completely alien. I have come for your answer, King of Earth. Phaethon's voice echoed across the courtyard. Palace guards stood at their posts, but their weapons seemed foolish against such a being. Will you and your people worship me as your god? Do-hyun walked down the palace steps slowly. His advisors had begged him not to meet the alien alone, but he had insisted. General Taejin and Minister Somin watched from the palace windows, ready to act if needed. Great Phaethon, Do-hyun said, stopping 10 feet away from the energy being. Before I give you my answer, I ask that you listen to a story. It is about 2 people who lived in this very city not long ago. Phaethon's form flickered with what might have been annoyance. I did not come here for children's tales, mortal. I came for worship. Humor me, Do-hyun replied calmly. If you are truly a god, then you have all the time in the universe. What is a few minutes to an eternal being? The alien god's energy form pulsed brighter, then dimmed. Speak quickly. Do-hyun nodded and began. 20 years ago, a terrible sickness came to our world. We called it the Great Plague. It killed 1 person out of every 3 it touched. Hospitals overflowed with the dying. Families were torn apart. Many people lost hope. As Do-hyun spoke, holographic images appeared in the air around them. His personal AI assistant was projecting historical records of the plague years. Images of empty streets, crowded hospitals, and grieving families filled the space between the king and the god. In this city lived a man named Ji-hoon. Do-hyun continued. He was 25 years old and worked as a teacher at a small school. When the plague began, the government ordered all schools to close. Children were sent home to protect them from getting sick. The hologram showed a young man with kind eyes and gentle hands. Ji-hoon was standing in front of a classroom helping a young student with her reading. But Ji-hoon noticed something terrible. Many children had nowhere safe to go. Their parents had died from the plague or were too sick to care for them. These children wandered the streets hungry and afraid. So Ji-hoon made a choice. The hologram shifted to show Ji-hoon opening his school at night, letting in dozens of frightened children. He gave them food from his own kitchen and made beds for them in the classrooms. He turned his school into a home for lost children. Every night more children came. Soon he was caring for over 200 orphans. He spent his own money to feed them. He stayed awake all night to comfort those who had nightmares. He became like a father to children who had lost everything. Vathon's energy form had grown still. His shifting face seemed to focus more clearly on the images. This man gained nothing from this action. Where is the benefit to himself? That is exactly the point, Do-hyun said with a small smile. Now let me tell you about Nayeon. The hologram changed to show a woman in a nurse's uniform. She had tired eyes but a warm smile, and her hands moved gently as she cared for patients. Nayeon worked at Seoul Central Hospital during the worst days of the plague. While other medical staff fled the city to protect themselves, she volunteered for extra shifts. 18 hours a day she cared for the sickest patients. She held the hands of dying people so they would not be alone. She sang lullabies to children who cried for their dead mothers. Another fool, Vathon said, but his voice seemed less certain than before. One night Ji-hoon brought a sick child to the hospital. Do-hyun continued. The little girl had a high fever and was barely breathing. All the doctors had gone home, afraid to touch plague patients, but Nayeon stayed. She worked for 6 hours to save that child's life. The hologram showed the meeting between Ji-hoon and Nayeon in the hospital corridor. Both looked exhausted, but when they saw each other, something changed in their faces. That was how they met. Two people who had given up their own comfort to help others. They did not fall in love because of beauty or wealth. They fell in love because they recognized the same kindness in each other's hearts. Vathon moved closer to the holographic images. His energy form seemed to be studying the faces of Ji-hoon and Nayeon with growing interest. Their courtship was not normal, Do-hyun continued. Instead of romantic dinners, they shared their last bread with hungry children. Instead of dancing, they took turns staying awake to watch over sick patients. Their first kiss happened while they were both exhausted. From working, covered in sweat and medicine, caring for others, the hologram showed intimate moments between the couple. Ji-hoon teaching Nayeon how to comfort frightened children. Nayeon showing Ji-hoon how to care for sick patients. Both of them falling asleep side by side on hospital chairs after working all night. But they were happy, Do-hyun said softly. Not because they had wealth or power. They were happy because they had found someone who understood that true joy comes from giving to others. They planned to marry when the plague ended. They dreamed of having children of their own and teaching them to be kind. This is merely biology, Vathon said, but his voice had become quieter. Mammals form pair bonds for reproduction. There is nothing special about this. Do-hyun looked directly at the alien god. Is that what you think? Then you have not heard the end of their story. The holographic images froze, showing Ji-hoon and Nayeon holding hands while watching over sleeping children in the converted school. Their love was tested in ways that no force in the universe should test love, Do-hyun said. Because the plague grew worse, much worse, and both Ji-hoon and Nayeon would face a choice that would define what love truly means. Vathon's energy form pulsed impatiently. Continue. Tomorrow, Do-hyun said firmly. If you want to hear the rest of their story, you must wait. True stories like true love cannot be rushed. The alien god's form flared brighter with anger. You dare make me wait? I dare ask you to understand patience, Do-hyun replied. If you destroy me now, you will never know how their story ends. And I promise you, great Vathon, their story will teach you something about power that all your cosmic abilities cannot. Vathon hovered in silence for a long moment. Around them, the palace guards held their breath. Finally, the alien god spoke. One more day. But if your story does not satisfy me, your world will burn. The energy being dissolved back into the beam of light and returned to his ship. Do-hyun remained standing in the courtyard looking up at the crystal vessel above. Tomorrow, he whispered, you will learn what sacrifice truly means. The second day dawned gray and cold. Across the world, people watched the skies nervously. Some countries had already started building temples to Vathon. Others were collecting their most precious treasures. But in Seoul, King Do-yun waited, calmly in the palace courtyard. At exactly noon, the crystal ship descended again. Vathon materialized in his beam of blue light, his energy form crackling with impatience. His forearms moved restlessly, and his face shifted between dozens of alien expressions. I have returned for the continuation of your tale, mortal king, Vathon announced, but know that my patience grows thin. Your species across this world are already preparing to worship me properly. Why do you delay with stories? Do-hyun stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. Because stories contain truths that simple worship cannot teach. Yesterday I told you how Ji-hoon and Naeun found love through service to others. Today I will tell you how their love faced the ultimate test. The holographic projector activated again, showing images of the plague-ravaged city. But these images were darker than before. Bodies lay in the streets. Hospitals had closed their doors. Even the government buildings stood empty. The plague entered its final phase, Do-hyun began. It had mutated into something even deadlier. People were dying. Within hours of infection, the government collapsed. Police and soldiers abandoned their posts to flee the city. Seoul became a city of the dead and dying. Vathon's form flickered with interest. And your heroes? Did they flee like the others? No, Do-hyun said simply. Ji-hoon and the 200 children in his school were trapped. Food supplies were running out. Many of the children were getting sick. Naeun was working alone in a hospital where even the other doctors had abandoned their patients. The hologram showed Ji-hoon sitting with sick children, wiping their fevered faces with wet cloths. In another scene, Naeun moved through empty hospital corridors, the only person caring for dozens of dying patients. But then something miraculous happened. Do-hyun continued. Our scientists discovered a cure. Vathon's energy form grew brighter. Then your story has a happy ending. The mortals were saved by their intelligence. Not quite, Do-hyun said sadly. The cure existed, but it was trapped in the Central Research Laboratory. The building had been sealed off because of radiation contamination. Anyone who entered would die within hours from exposure. The cure was so close, yet impossible to reach. The hologram showed the research building, dark and empty, with warning signs covering its entrances. Radiation detectors nearby showed deadly levels. The government made announcements on the emergency radio, Do-hyun continued. They told people about the cure, but admitted that no one could retrieve it. It seemed that humanity would die knowing that salvation existed just beyond their reach. A cruel irony, Vathon observed. But what does this have to do with your two mortals? Do-hyun's expression grew heavy with sorrow. Everything. Because both Ji-hoon and Naeun heard the radio announcement, and both of them immediately knew what they had to do. The hologram shifted to show Ji-hoon in his school, looking at the sick children around him. His face was filled with determination and pain. In a parallel scene, Naeun stood in the hospital, surrounded by dying patients, tears streaming down her face. Ji-hoon gathered all the older children together, Do-hyun said. He told them he was going to get medicine that would save everyone. He promised them that someone would come to take care of them. He hugged each child and told them he loved them like his own sons and daughters. The holographic Ji-hoon was shown saying goodbye to the children. Some were too young to understand. Others cried and begged him not to leave. But he gently pulled away from their grasping hands. At the same time, Naeun was writing letters to her patients, Do-hyun continued. She told each one that they were brave, that they mattered, that their lives had meaning. She sang one final lullaby to the children in the pediatric ward. Vathon's form had grown very still. They both intended to retrieve the cure. Yes, Do-hyun said. Both of them left for the research laboratory at the same time, not knowing the other had made the same choice. They met at the building's entrance, just as the sun was setting. The hologram showed the moment of their meeting. Ji-hoon and Naeun faced each other in front of the sealed laboratory. both wearing improvised radiation suits. Their faces were visible through the helmet visors, filled with love and terrible sadness. What did they say to each other? Vathon asked, his voice unusually quiet. Jihoon spoke first, Dohyun replied. He said, "My love, go back to the hospital. Let me do this. I have lived a full life because of you. Now let me save others so they can find their own love." The holographic scene played out the conversation. Nayeon shook her head and replied through her helmet radio. "No, my darling. You have 200 children who need you. I will go. You must live to raise them and teach them to be kind like you taught me." They argued, Dohyun continued, each one trying to convince the other to live, each one willing to die so their beloved could continue helping others. They had found perfect love, and now that love demanded the ultimate sacrifice. Vathon moved closer to the hologram. Which one entered the building? Dohyun's voice became very soft. Neither. And both. The hologram showed what happened next. While Jihoon and Nayeon stood arguing outside the main entrance, Nayeon suddenly ran toward a side door. She had memorized the building's layout during her medical training years earlier. She knew a faster route to the laboratory. She left him a message on the radio, Dohyun said. Her last words were, "Love is not about living together forever, my heart. Love is about giving everything so the other can continue to love this world. Take care of our children. Tell them stories of happiness. And remember that every act of kindness you show them is a gift from me to you." The hologram showed Jihoon pounding on the sealed doors, screaming Nayeon's name, but it was too late. She had locked herself inside the building. The radiation levels were too high for him to follow. She found the cure. Dohyun continued. It took her 3 hours to reach the laboratory and retrieve the medicine. By then, the radiation had already begun killing her. But she managed to get the cure to the building's exit and transfer it through a sealed chamber to Jihoon. Vathon's energy form was now completely motionless. She died. She died holding a photo of Jihoon and the children, Dohyun confirmed. Her last words were spoken to empty air, but somehow Jihoon heard them through the building's walls. She said, "I am not leaving you. Every life you save with this medicine is me loving you again." The hologram showed Jihoon receiving the cure, then collapsing to his knees outside the building, sobbing for the woman he loved. The cure saved millions of lives, Dohyun said. The plague ended within months. Jihoon spent the rest of his life raising the orphaned children just as Nayeon had asked. He never married again. Every year on the anniversary of her death, he would visit her grave and tell her about all the good things the children had done. Vathon's voice, when it finally came, sounded different than before. She gained nothing from her sacrifice. No eternal life. No cosmic power. No worshippers to remember her name. She gained everything, Dohyun replied firmly. She gained the knowledge that her love would continue living in every child Jihoon raised, in every life the cure saved, in every act of kindness that spread from her sacrifice. She became immortal not through power but through love. The alien god's form flickered uncertainly. This makes no sense to me. Why sacrifice for beings who would forget her name? King Dohyun looked directly at Vathon. Because that is what love truly is, Great One. Love gives without expecting anything in return. Love sacrifices without demanding gratitude. Love serves without requiring worship. But what is the point? Vathon asked, his voice filled with genuine confusion. What is gained if there is no recognition, no reward, no eternal glory? Dohyun smiled, but his eyes were sad. Tomorrow, I will tell you about others who learned this same truth, and perhaps you will begin to understand why we humans have a different definition of what makes someone truly divine. The third day arrived with storm clouds gathering over Seoul. Lightning flashed in the distance, but the purple glow from Vathon's ship made the sky look even stranger. King Dohyun stood in the palace courtyard earlier than usual, watching the alien vessel hover silently above. When noon came, Vathon descended faster than before. His energy form seemed more unstable, crackling with different colors. His forearms moved restlessly, and his shifting face showed expressions that looked almost troubled. "I have thought about your story all night," Vathon announced without greeting. "This Nyan creature died for nothing. She gained no power, no followers, no eternal kingdom. Her name is forgotten by most of your species. How can you call this divine?" Dohyun nodded calmly. "You are right that most people have forgotten her name, but you are wrong about her gaining nothing. Today I will tell you about others who made similar choices. Perhaps then you will understand what humans truly consider divine." The holographic projector activated, but instead of showing one scene, it displayed dozens of images floating in the air around them. Each image showed a different person in a different time and place. "Let me tell you about Grandmother Yeji," Dohyun began, pointing to an image of an elderly woman with gentle eyes and wrinkled hands. She lived in the poorest district of Busan. 30 years ago, every morning she would walk to the slums carrying bags of rice and old books. The hologram showed Yeji sitting under a bridge with dozens of dirty children gathered around her. She was teaching them to read using books that were falling apart. The children's faces were thin from hunger, but their eyes were bright with curiosity. Yeji had been a professor at a university, Dohyun continued. She could have lived comfortably in retirement. Instead, she spent her pension money buying food for street children. She taught them to read because she believed every child deserved education, even though society had forgotten. "Another fool wasting resources," Vathon said, but his voice lacked conviction. "She did this every day for 15 years, Dohyun said. Rain or shine, sick or healthy, she came to teach the children. When she died at age 85, over 300 people came to her funeral. They were all adults who had once been those hungry street children, doctors, teachers, engineers, shop owners, all successful because an old woman had refused to let them remain ignorant." The hologram showed the funeral scene. Grown men and women wept as they carried Yeji's simple wooden coffin. Each person placed a flower on her grave, and many whispered words of gratitude. "Did any of them worship her?" Vathon asked. "No," Dohyun replied. "They loved her. There is a difference." The holographic scene changed to show a man in a space suit standing beside a massive rocket ship. His face was visible through the helmet visor, showing determination mixed with sadness. "This is Captain Hyunwoo," Dohyun said. 20 years ago, we discovered that the planet Kepler 442b had a dying civilization. Their sun was growing cold, and their people were freezing to death. They sent out a distress signal that reached Earth." Vathon's form pulsed with interest. "You had contact with other species?" "Yes, but we were too far apart to help them in time," Dohyun explained. "It would take a human ship 15 years to reach their planet. By then they would all be dead. The journey was also one way. Our technology could not bring the ship back to Earth." The hologram showed scientists and politicians in heated discussions. Some argued that humanity could not risk resources on a hopeless mission. Others said it was their moral duty to try. Captain Hyunwoo volunteered to go anyway, Dohyun continued. He knew he would never see Earth again. He knew he would probably arrive too late to save anyone. But he said, "Even if I can only help one alien child survive, the journey will have meaning." The scene showed Hyunwoo saying goodbye to his wife and young son at the spaceport. His family was crying, but they supported his decision. He hugged them one last time and entered the ship. "He spent 15 years alone in space," Dohyun said softly. 15 years with only computer programs for company. When he finally reached Kepler 442b, he found that most of the alien population had died, but 50,000 had survived by hiding in underground shelters. Vathon leaned forward, his energy form brightening. What did he do? He used his ship's power core to provide heat for their underground city, Dohyun replied. He gave them Earth's agricultural knowledge to help them grow food in artificial light. He spent his final years teaching them human technologies that could help them survive. The hologram showed Hyunwoo working alongside tall, blue-skinned aliens in underground tunnels. Despite being alone among an alien species, he looked content and purposeful. When he died at age 70, the aliens built a statue in his honor, Dohyun said. But more importantly, they survived. Today, that planet has a thriving civilization of 2 million beings. They name their children after him, not as worship, but as remembrance of the human who saved their species. He gained followers, Vathon observed. He gained gratitude, Do-hyun corrected. They remember him with love, not fear. The holographic scene changed again, this time showing a woman in a white laboratory coat. She was working with test tubes and microscopes, her face focused and intense. Dr. Subin was our greatest medical researcher, Do-hyun said. She discovered cures for 3 major diseases. She was nominated for the Nobel Prize 5 times. Universities around the world offered her millions of dollars to work for them. The hologram showed Subin receiving awards and shaking hands with world leaders. She lived in a beautiful house and wore expensive clothes, but then she learned that her cures were too expensive for poor people to buy. Do-hyun continued. The pharmaceutical companies were charging huge amounts of money for medicines that cost very little to make. Children in poor countries were dying from diseases she had already cured. Vathon's form flickered with what might have been curiosity. What did she do? She gave away all her research, Do-hyun replied. She published the formulas for free on the internet. She quit working for the rich companies and moved to rural areas where she could teach local doctors how to make the medicines themselves. The hologram showed Subin's life changing dramatically. Her beautiful house was replaced by a simple hut in a village. Her expensive clothes became basic work uniforms, but her face looked happier than before. She lived the rest of her life in poverty, Do-hyun said, but her free medicine saved millions of lives around the world. When she died, no newspapers wrote about her funeral, no governments gave her honors, but in 1,000 small villages, mothers named their healthy babies after the doctor who had saved their children. The holographic images faded, leaving just Do-hyun and Vathon facing each other in the courtyard. Each of these people could have chosen power, Do-hyun said quietly. Yeji could have kept her money and lived comfortably. Hyunwoo could have stayed on Earth with his family. Subin could have remained wealthy and famous, but they all chose something else. They chose to waste their potential, Vathon said, but his voice sounded uncertain. They chose to serve rather than be served, Do-hyun replied. They chose to give rather than take. They chose to lift others up rather than demand others bow down. In human eyes, this is what makes someone truly divine. Vathon's energy form began to pulse erratically. This makes no sense. Power demands acknowledgement. Strength requires submission. I have conquered 1,000 worlds, and every species has worshipped me. This is the natural order, is it? Do-hyun asked gently. Tell me, great Vathon, in all your conquests across the galaxy, how many species have truly loved you? How many would choose to help you if you were powerless? How many would mourn if you simply disappeared? The question hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. Vathon's form grew dim, then bright, then dim again. For the first time since his arrival, the alien god seemed to have no immediate answer. I have been worshipped by billions, Vathon finally whispered. Entire civilizations have built temples in my name. They have offered me their greatest treasures. Because they feared you, Do-hyun said softly. But fear is not love. Submission is not devotion. True divinity does not demand worship. It inspires love freely given. The storm clouds above began to release rain, but the drops seemed to pass harmlessly through Vathon's energy form. The alien god stood motionless in the courtyard, processing concepts that his cosmic mind had never encountered. Tomorrow, Do-hyun said, I will tell you the final part of what humanity has learned about divinity, and then you must make your choice about what kind of god you wish to be. The 4th day dawned clear and bright. Around the world, people watched their televisions and computer screens, waiting to see what would happen when the 3-day deadline ended. Some prayed to their old gods, others prepared for the worst. But in Seoul, King Do-hyun stood peacefully in his palace garden, feeding birds from his hand. At exactly noon, Vathon's ship descended one final time. But something was different. The crystal vessel moved slowly, almost hesitantly. When the blue beam of light appeared, Vathon's energy form looked smaller than before. His forearms moved gently instead of restlessly, and his shifting face seemed more focused, more thoughtful. "I have not slept," Vathon said quietly. "For 3 days and nights, I have replayed your stories in my mind. I have searched through my memories of 1,000 conquered worlds looking for something I think I have never truly seen." Do-Yun set down the bag of birdseed and walked closer to the alien god. "What were you looking for?" "Love," Vathon replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "In all my conquests across all those civilizations, I have seen fear, anger, hatred, and submission. But I realize now that I have never seen what your Naeon showed to Jihoon, what your Yeji showed to those children, what your Hyunwoo showed to an alien species he had never met." The holographic projector activated one last time, but now it showed images from Vathon's own memories, scenes of massive fleets attacking peaceful planets, alien beings bowing before Vathon's energy form while their cities burned in the background, temples built by slaves who worked until they collapsed from exhaustion. "I have been worshipped by billions," Vathon continued, "but as I watched your memories, I began to understand the difference. They worshipped me because I threatened to destroy them. They built temples because I demanded it. They offered treasures because I would kill them if they refused." Do-Yun nodded slowly. "And how did that make you feel?" For a long moment, Vathon did not answer. His energy form flickered through dozens of different colors, as if he were experiencing emotions he had no names for. "Empty," he finally admitted. "Powerful, but empty. I thought power was enough. I thought being feared was the same as being respected. I thought worship earned through threats was the same as love given freely." The holographic images changed to show the people Do-Hyun had described over the past 3 days. Jihoon raising orphan children, Naeon caring for plague victims, Yeji teaching street children to read, Hyunwoo working alongside aliens on a distant planet, Subin giving away her medical discoveries. "Your people," Vathon said, studying the images. "They could have chosen power over others. Instead, they chose to serve. They could have demanded recognition. Instead, they worked without expecting reward. They could have preserved their own lives. Instead, they sacrificed everything for strangers. And that is why we remember them," Do-Yun said softly. "Not because they forced us to, because they inspired us to." Vathon's form grew brighter, but it was a warm light now, not the harsh glare of before. "I have made a terrible mistake. For countless ages I have traveled the galaxy demanding worship, thinking that fear and submission would fill the emptiness inside me. But fear cannot create love. Power cannot create devotion. Force cannot create the thing I was truly searching for." "What were you searching for?" Do-Yun asked. "Connection," Vathon replied. "I was searching for someone who would choose to be with me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Someone who would care if I lived or died. Someone who would remember me with warmth instead of terror." The alien god's energy form began to change. The harsh edges softened. The crackling electricity became a gentle glow. His forearms moved with grace instead of threat. "Your 3 days are finished," General Taejin announced, entering the courtyard with a squad of soldiers. Their weapons were raised, though everyone knew they would be useless against a cosmic being. "Have you made your decision, creature?" But before Vathon could answer, King Do-Yun stepped between the general and the alien god. "Lower your weapons," Do-Yun commanded. "Can you not see that everything has changed?" Vathon looked at the human soldiers, then at their king. "You defend me," he said with wonder, "even though I threatened your world, even though I could still destroy you all. You stand between me and harm." "Because I believe you have learned something important," Do-Yun replied. "And because showing mercy to someone who was once our enemy is also part of what makes us human." General Taejin reluctantly lowered his weapon, though his face showed confusion and worry. Vathon turned to address all the humans in the courtyard. "People of Earth, I came here demanding your worship. I threatened to destroy your world if you refuse to serve me. But your king has shown me something I never knew existed. He has shown me that true divinity is not about being worshipped. It is about being worthy of love. The alien god's form began to shift again, becoming more solid, more defined. When the transformation finished, he looked almost human, though still tall and glowing with soft light. "I withdraw my demand for worship," Phaethon announced. "Instead, I ask for something much more difficult to earn. I ask if you would teach me how to love as you love, how to serve as you serve, how to give without expecting anything in return." King Dohyun smiled and extended his hand toward the former alien god. "Everyone can learn to love, Phaethon, even beings who once thought power was everything." Phaethon stared at the offered hand for a moment, then slowly reached out with his own newly formed human hand. When their fingers touched, something remarkable happened. The crystal ship above them began to change, its sharp edges smoothing into curves, its harsh lights becoming warm and welcoming. "What will you do now?" Dohyun asked. "I will visit every world I once conquered," Phaethon replied. "I will ask forgiveness from every species I forced into submission. I will try to heal the damage I caused through fear and violence, and I will learn, slowly and patiently, what it means to earn love instead of demanding worship." "That may take a very long time," Dohyun warned. "I have all the time in the universe," Phaethon said with his first genuine smile, "and I finally understand that some things are worth waiting for." Over the following weeks, reports came in from around the world. The crystal ships that had hovered over major cities were transforming into hospitals and schools. Beings that looked like Phaethon, but gentler and more human-like, were working alongside doctors and teachers, learning how to help instead of harm. Children who had been terrified of the alien ships were now playing in their gardens. Scientists who had feared invasion were now sharing knowledge with beings from distant stars. The greatest threat in human history had become humanity's first student in the art of love. King Dohyun often visited the ship that remained over Seoul. He found Phaethon there, reading human books about philosophy and kindness, studying the same stories that had changed his understanding of divinity. "Do you regret it?" Dohyun asked one day. "Giving up all that power?" Phaethon looked up from a book about Naeun and Jihoon that had been written after their story spread around the world. "I thought I had power before," he replied. "But I was wrong. Real power is not the ability to destroy. Real power is the ability to create, to heal, to inspire others to be better than they were." "And have you found what you were searching for?" Dohyun asked. Phaethon smiled and gestured toward the window, where human children were playing with young aliens from a dozen different worlds, all of them laughing together in the garden below. "I am still learning," Phaethon said. "But for the first time in my existence, I am not empty. I wake up each day excited to discover new ways to help instead of harm, new ways to give instead of take, new ways to earn the love that no amount of forced worship could ever provide." King Dohyun nodded and placed a gentle hand on his friend's shoulder. "Then you have learned the greatest lesson of all. True divinity is not about being worshipped. It is about being worthy of love freely given." Outside the window, the children continued to play, their laughter carrying on the wind like a song of hope for a universe where power served love instead of love serving power.